Hungarian Folk Tales. Green Peter. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there stood a large farm. A family lived on that farm with a husband, a wife, a son, and a daughter. When his wife died, the husband married again, so that there should be someone to bring up the children. But the new wife did not like the children, and she put poison in their food. When the children sat down to eat their supper, a white dove flew down and said, "Children, don't eat the soup because it's poisoned. Run away from home and never look back." The boy and his young sister walked and walked until they heard someone calling, "Green Peter, Green Peter, come here." It was a poor little fish cast ashore by the sea. "Pick me up, Green Peter, throw me back into the water, do good and you will prosper." So the boy happily helped the little fish. They walked and walked until they heard someone calling, "Green Peter, Green Peter, come here." This time it was a little bird that had lost its flock. The bird begged the boy, "Green Peter, please put me on the branch so that I can fly on with my bird brothers." Green Peter put it up on the branch, and the little bird said to him, "Thank you, do good, and you will prosper." They walked and walked until they heard someone calling, "Green Peter, come here." A poor shriveled rosebush was calling. It begged the boy to water its roots. "Well, Green Peter," the rosebush said, "do good and you will prosper." Green Peter and his sister walked until they came to the town. When he reached the gate, the people called out to him, "Come in, Green Peter, come in, because there are already 99 heads on stakes and yours will be the 100th one." Even though Green Peter was afraid, he went in all the same. And he was told that the princess would marry the first man who could hide himself so well that she would never find him. So Green Peter went in and was ordered to hide himself 3 mornings running, because otherwise he would be beheaded. But if the princess failed to find him, she and half the kingdom would be his. Poor Peter wept and said to himself, "I've just managed to get away from my evil stepmother, and look what trouble I'm in again. Where could I possibly hide?" Suddenly the little fish appeared. "Why are you crying, Green Peter?" "Because the king said that unless I can hide from his daughter, he will have me beheaded." The fish opened its mouth and said, "Hide in here, Green Peter." So Green Peter slipped into the fish's mouth, and it swam to the bottom of the deep sea, where it hid itself in the sand. The young princess stepped out into the corridor. She rubbed her eyes and said, "Come out, Green Peter, from the mouth of the fish, from the sand at the bottom of the sea." So Green Peter came out. He crawled sadly out of the mouth of the fish and went to the royal palace. The next morning he tried again. "Where, oh where shall I hide?" Suddenly the little bird flew down and said to him, "Why are you crying, Green Peter?" "Why indeed, if I don't manage to hide from the princess, I'll be beheaded." The little bird spread its wings and said, "Come on, hide beneath my wings," and it flew up behind the back of the sun. When the princess came out to the corridor, she rubbed her eyes and caught sight of him at once. "Green Peter, come out from behind the back of the sun, from beneath the bird's wings." The bird flew down to the ground and let Green Peter slip out from under its wings. Green Peter went sadly back, and next morning he again set out. But by now he was crying more than ever before. "Oh, oh, oh, what will become of me?" The rosebush came up to him and said, "Don't worry, I'm going to hide you." They went before the royal palace and stopped right in front of the corridor. The rosebush sat down and said, "Hide among my leaves and thorns," and it opened up so that it became more radiant than the sun itself. The princess came out. She rubbed her eyes, but she couldn't see Green Peter anywhere. "Rub your eyes again, my girl," said the king. "Or would you prefer to marry?" Again the princess rubbed her eyes. She looked and looked, but to no avail. She eventually grew tired of looking for the lad and called out to him, "Come out, Green Peter, come out from wherever you are. I can't see you anywhere." And so Green Peter came out at last. The young couple married right away. He got half the kingdom too, and the wedding feast lasted for 3 long days. I was there myself, and I had a fine time. I was even given a nice big bone to chew. Hungarian Folk Tales. Jack Crow. Once upon a time, a very long time ago, there lived an elderly couple who had nothing in the world except a young son they called Jack Crow. As soon as the boy was old enough to know his own mind, he told his parents, "I've decided to go out into the world to find work with a wealthy family." His elderly parents did not protest, and so Jack Crow set forth to seek his fortune. When he reached the edge of the village, he caught sight of a swarm of ants marching from one field to the next across the road. And right at the back, he saw a single lame ant that fell by the wayside and could not rejoin its friends. So Jack Crow helped the little ant back to its tiny feet. "Thank you for your kind help," said the ant. "In return for your good deed, I shall give you this whistle. Whenever you're in trouble, blow it, and I'll come to your aid in an instant." So Jack Crow put it in his pocket and continued on his way. As the moon rose in the sky, he found himself in the middle of a vast forest, where a white-haired old man lived in a small house. "Good evening, old man," said Jack. "Good evening to you too, son. What brings you to this distant place?" the old man asked. "I'm looking for a wealthy family who will employ me to work, but now I simply need shelter for the night," Jack Crow told him. So the old man let him stay for the night, and in the morning he gave him some wise advice. "Well, my boy, you should follow the track through the forest, where you will find a vast meadow. There you will discover a giant mountain. On top of that mountain stands a castle crafted from pure gold, and that is where the king resides. I happen to know that the king needs servants, so I suggest you go there to seek employ." So Jack Crow thanked the old man and continued on his way. When he reached the edge of the forest, he noticed a flock of crows flying around something on the ground a little way ahead. There he found a crow flapping helplessly around because its feathers were heavy with morning dew and it could not get off the ground. Young Jack took pity on the bird, picked it up and petted and patted it until all its feathers had dried. Then the bird said, "Now hear me, Jack Crow. You've done me a good deed, so in turn I shall give you this whistle. If you're ever in trouble, blow it, and I shall come to your aid in an instant." Jack soon came to the foot of the mountain on the shores of the sea. As he stood and stared out, he saw the waves toss a fish from the waters that landed flapping on the ground. Jack took pity on the fish and gently helped it back into the salty water. When the fish was fully recovered, it said, "In return for your good deed, you can expect another. I know you have 2 whistles already, so let me give you a third. If ever you're in trouble, blow it, and I'll come to your aid in an instant." So Jack hurried to the castle on top of the mountain. There the king greeted him and asked, "Well, what can I do for you, my fine fellow?" "I seek work with a wealthy family, Your Majesty." And the king said, "In my kingdom, 3 days are the same as a full year. The payment is 300 florins, and you can eat and drink your fill. But if you fail to obey my commands, I shall have you executed." On the first day, just after sunset, the king had Jack brought before him and said, "Now hear me, Jack Crow. You are now my servant, so I command you go into the barnyard where you'll find 3 piles of millet. By morning, I want you to sort the seeds from the straw. If you fail to complete my command, I shall have you executed." Jack Crow was worried out of his wits. What should he do? Then he suddenly remembered the whistle the ant had given him, and he blew it. Out of nowhere, a huge swarm of ants appeared. There were so many of them that not even 1,000,000 men could have counted them. "How can we help you, Jack, my friend?" "I've been given a task impossible to complete," Jack said. And he told the ant what the king had commanded. "Have no fear," the ants told him. "We'll get hard to work and sort all the seeds from the straw by morning." By the time the sun had risen in the morning sky, the millet seeds and the straw were in 2 separate stacks. The king said, "I see you've done a good job, so now you are free for the rest of the day. But you must report to me again this evening." When evening came, the king said, "My faithful servant, I command you to go to the front of my castle where my 3 daughters are strolling back and forth. I want you to make sure they come to no harm. If you fail your task, I'll have you executed." Jack did as he was bid and sat down in front of the entrance to the castle to keep watch over the 3 princesses. And as Jack sat there, he grew so bored and tired that he fell fast asleep. And the 3 princesses turned into crows and flew away. Young Jack woke with a start to see the girls had vanished. He was worried out of his wits until he remembered the whistle the crow had given him. He blew the whistle, and a flock of crows arrived. "How can we help you, friend?" "I am so very sad because I have a task impossible to complete. The king commanded me to watch over his 3 daughters, but I dozed off and all 3 princesses vanished," Jack replied. "Fear not," the crows told him. "We shall find them for you. Climb up on my back and we'll fly off in search of the 3 lost princesses." So Jack climbed onto the crow's back and they flew off into the distance, but the princesses were nowhere to be found. So then they flew behind the moon, where they saw the princesses in the shape of crows. Then Jack threw 3 reins around the crows' necks and led them slowly back down into the castle courtyard. On the evening of the 3rd day, the king again ordered that Jack be brought before him. The king said, "I command you to go and find the gold ring which fell off my finger today and rolled into the sea. If you fail the task, I'll have you executed." Jack knew that this was impossible to solve alone, and so he ran to the seashore where he blew on the whistle that the fish had given him. A shoal of fish appeared in an instant and asked, "How can we help you, friend?" There Jack Crow quickly told them what he had been commanded to do. "Don't worry, friend," said the king of the fish. "We shall do our best to find that ring for you." The fish searched and dawn was almost breaking, but they still had not found the ring, until they found it in the belly of an enormous goldfish. "Well, my faithful servant," said the king, "you've done an honest job of serving me. In return, I will give you the hand of one of my daughters in marriage, half of my kingdom, and 3 cartloads of gold for good measure." However, Jack Crow did not want to marry and did not want half the kingdom, for all he wanted was the gold, and the king happily gave it to him. Jack Crow drove the 3 carts home to his beloved parents, where they ate good food and drank fine wine, and all lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Giant Beanstalk. Once upon a time, many years ago, there was a poor woman, and she had a son and a little cow. They had no food at home, and so the mother told her son, "Go, son, drive the cow to market, but be sure to get a good price for her." So the son took the cow to the market. He quickly found a buyer and exchanged the family cow for a single bean. The boy hurried home to show his mother what he had made at the market. The mother cried and cried when she learned that he had sold the cow for a single bean, but her son consoled her. "Don't be sad, mother. The old man who bought the cow said that I should plant this bean today and wait to see what happens." So the young boy planted the bean under the window in the small garden, but he was so anxious to see what would become of the bean that he couldn't even eat his supper. He awoke the following day to discover that the bean had grown overnight. He looked out of the window, but he couldn't even see the top of the giant beanstalk. He thought he'd take a better look, so he walked out of the house and stared up at the sky. However hard he looked, he still couldn't see the top of the beanstalk, so the boy said to his mother, "Well, mother, now you can see how much that bean was worth. I'm going to climb to the top to see how high it is." He climbed and climbed until the great height made him feel dizzy in the head. There was a hole in the clouds, and the young boy peeped through and saw a spectacular house. He thought, "I'm tired after climbing, so I can stay here for the night and climb back down the beanstalk in the morning." He walked into the house and saw an old woman. The woman asked the boy, "What are you doing here, my child?" "My husband is a dragon. He has 3 heads. If he sees you, he'll eat you up." The boy begged the woman to hide him because he was terribly afraid of the dragon. The woman asked him, "Are you hungry, my child?" "Oh yes, I'm very hungry indeed." The woman immediately gave the boy some supper, and he thanked her for her kindness. "Come now, hide away at once as my husband is coming home." She brought a large bowl into the room and hid it underneath the bed. The little boy was very tired, but he was far too afraid to sleep. When the clock struck 12, he heard a terrible rumbling and grumbling sound. The fierce dragon walked into the house carrying a black hen under his arm. He put it on the table and said, "Lay an egg," and the black hen laid a golden egg. Then the dragon said again, "Lay another," and the hen laid as many golden eggs as the dragon wanted. But the fearsome dragon was very hungry. "Wife, fetch my supper." And his wife brought the dragon a meal. The dragon ate all his supper up. When he'd eaten his supper, the dragon told his wife to fetch his hurdy-gurdy. "Wife, is that a stranger I can smell in the house?" "Be calm, my dear. There is no stranger here." "But there is. Bring him here or I'll tear you to pieces too." But the wife continued to calm her monstrous husband. The dragon played music until he fell asleep. He slept so peacefully that he didn't even snore. The wife thought it best to go to bed too, because it was almost dawn. When the boy saw that the dragon and his wife were fast asleep, he crept out from underneath the bowl and grabbed the black hen. He took the dragon's hurdy-gurdy, and just before he disappeared back through the hole, he took a look back and saw that the dragon was running after him. So the young boy climbed quickly back down the giant beanstalk and grabbed a sharp axe. And he chopped the giant beanstalk down. The dragon fell to the ground and broke all his bones. Nobody had to be afraid of him anymore. Then he went to his mother, who was frightened by all the fighting. "Don't be afraid, Mother. We shall both have food from now on." "How so, son?" Then the son placed the hen on the table and stroked it, saying, "Lay an egg." And the black hen laid a glorious golden egg, and it kept laying golden eggs until the mother and son were both rich. And the boy played beautiful music all day long to his mother's delight. And if you don't believe my story, you can go and see for yourself.